The morning sun rose over New Jeju, like it had for the past 50 years. Children ran through the streets carrying colorful banners for the anniversary celebration. Farmers guided their harvest drones across golden fields that stretched to the horizon. In the central plaza, workers assembled stages for the evening's concert. Nobody knew they had less than 6 hours to live. Commander Taeyang Park stood in the Colonial Defense Headquarters, watching the preparations through his office window. He had served in the Terran Defense Fleet for 20 years before retiring to this quiet colony world. New Jeju was supposed to be his peaceful ending, a place where wars were just old stories and danger was a broken irrigation system. His communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "Sir, we're picking up something strange on long-range sensors." Taeyang walked to the display screen. Dozens of red dots appeared at the edge of the system. They were moving fast, too fast for commercial vessels. "Try to make contact. Standard greeting protocols." The officer sent out the message in 12 different languages. "Unknown vessels, this is New Jeju Colonial Defense. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Silence. Taeyang felt his old military instincts returning. Something was very wrong. "Get me a count. How many ships?" 47 vessels, sir. Military configuration. They're not responding to any frequency." Across the colony, people continued their celebrations. A little girl named Yoonji bought cotton candy from a street vendor. Dr. Hana Choi kissed her 2 sons goodbye as they ran off to join their friends. Captain Minho Kang performed routine checks on his survey ship at the orbital dock. None of them knew what was coming. The unknown fleet dropped out of quantum space right above the planet. Taeyang stared at the screens in horror. These weren't exploration vessels. These were warships, massive angular things covered in weapons. Their hulls bore markings he didn't recognize. "Broadcast on all emergency channels," Taeyang ordered. "This is not a drill. All citizens proceed immediately to emergency shelters. I repeat, this is not a drill." Alarms screamed across New Jeju. The happy music stopped. Parents grabbed their children. The elderly moved as fast as they could toward the underground bunkers. But New Jeju was a farming colony. It had minimal military defense. The shelters were designed for natural disasters, not warfare. They could hold maybe 70,000 people. The colony had 2.3 million citizens. Taeyang opened every communication channel he had. "Unknown fleet, this is Commander Taeyang Park of New Jeju. We are a peaceful agricultural colony. We have no military value. Please respond." For a moment he thought they might answer. Then the first energy beam lanced down from orbit. It struck the northern farming district. 15,000 people died instantly. The ground turned to glass. The shockwave knocked people off their feet 300 kilometers away. "Return fire," Taeyang shouted, knowing it was useless. New Jeju had 6 orbital defense platforms. They opened up with everything they had. The alien warships didn't even bother with evasive maneuvers. The shots bounced off their shields like rain. Another beam struck the eastern residential sector. Then another hit the industrial zone. The aliens were methodical. They weren't trying to conquer. They were trying to erase. Dr. Hana Choi was in her laboratory when the bombardment started. She was a xenobiologist, one of the colony's best scientists. Her hands shook as she activated the emergency transmission system. If she was going to die, humanity needed to know what happened here. "This is Dr. Hana Choi, xenobiology lead, New Jeju Colony," she spoke into the recorder. Her voice was steady despite the building shaking around her. "We are under attack by an unknown alien species. 47 warships. They gave no warning, no demands, they're just killing us." She uploaded everything, sensor data, video feeds, biological scans of the attackers when their shields flickered. They're reptilian, advanced technology. Their weapon signature doesn't match any known species in the galactic database. Outside her window she could see the sky burning. Another beam struck somewhere close, the lights flickered. "Tell Earth," she continued. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them we died as humans. Tell them to remember us." The last thing her recorder captured was her whisper. "Junho, Minseo, Mommy loves you." Then her laboratory vanished in white light. Captain Minho Kang was luckier. His survey ship, the Dawn's Promise, was docked at the orbital station when the attack began. He watched in frozen horror as the planet below turned into an inferno. His home, his friends, everything he knew. "Captain, we need to go now," his engineer shouted. Minho's training kicked in. He couldn't save anyone, but he could make sure someone knew. He could make sure Earth learned what happened. He initiated emergency departure, not even waiting for the clamps to fully release. The Dawn's Promise tore away from the dying station with half its hull plating missing. 3 alien fighters broke off to chase him. Minho pushed his ship past safe limits. The engine temperature went red. Warning alarms screamed. One fighter got close enough to fire. The shot clipped his port side, sending the ship spinning. But Minho was a good pilot. He corrected the spin, dove toward New Jeju's moon, and used its gravity to slingshot away. The fighters followed, but he was faster, smaller, more desperate. He entered quantum space with the navigation computer still calculating. It was dangerous. It could tear his ship apart. But staying meant death. Behind him, New Jeju burned. Commander Tae-Yang Park died at his post. He stayed in the command center, coordinating evacuations until the very end. Only 73,000 people made it to the shelters. The rest died on the streets in their homes holding their loved ones. The alien commander, War Master Thraken of the Velkron Imperium, watched from his flagship's bridge. When the bombardment was complete, he sent a single message. It broadcast across all known frequencies to every species in the sector. This world belonged to the Velkron Imperium. Humanity's claim is forfeit. All human territories in this sector are now subject to annexation. Resistance will be met with extermination. Then the Velkron fleet departed, leaving nothing but ash and silence. 3 months later, the Dawn's Promise limped into Earth's solar system. Captain Minho Kang had barely eaten. He hadn't slept properly in weeks, but he had made it. Fleet Admiral Jiwon Nam received him at Lunar Command. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. Minho handed her the black box from his ship. "Everyone's dead, Admiral. All of them. New Jeju is gone." They played the recordings in the command center. Officers watched in silence as people burned, as children screamed. As Dr. Hana Choi's final message played out, "Tell them to remember us." Admiral Jiwon Nam stood perfectly still. Her face showed nothing, but her hands gripped the console so hard her knuckles went white. "We will," she whispered. "We will remember." The footage spread across human space like wildfire. Every news channel, every social media platform, every government broadcast. Earth watched New Jeju burn. Mars watched. The 47 human colonies watched their worst nightmare play out in high definition. Fleet Admiral Jiwon Nam released the recordings herself. She wanted everyone to see. She wanted them to understand what had been done to humanity's children. A farmer on Mars stopped his tractor and wept. A teacher on Earth's moon stood frozen in her classroom while students cried. On the colony world of New Dublin, people gathered in churches and temples and mosques praying for the dead. 15 billion humans mourned together. Prime Minister Dai Ho-sung watched the footage alone in his office. He was 70 years old. He had governed Earth through peace and prosperity. He had never imagined he would face something like this. When Dr. Hana Choi's final words played, he closed his eyes. "Tell them to remember us." He would remember. They all would. The funerals took place simultaneously across human space. Every colony, every station, every ship. For 1 hour, 15 billion people observed complete silence. No traffic, no machines, no voices, just silence for 2.3 million souls. Ambassador Kyung Lee stood before the Galactic Council 3 days later. The council chambers were massive, designed to hold representatives from 200 species. Most of them barely noticed when humanity spoke. Humans were a young race, weak, not important. Today, they paid attention. Kyung played the recordings. Every second, every scream. When it finished, The chamber was silent. The Velcran Imperium has committed genocide against a human colony, Kyung said. Her voice was steady, but cold. We demand justice. We demand the Council take action. We demand the Velcran be held accountable for this massacre. High Counselor Valaxis, an insectoid being that looked like a mantis made of silver, clicked its mandibles. The Council recognizes the tragedy that has befallen humanity. However, internal conflicts between minor species are not within our jurisdiction. The Velcran have not violated any treaty we recognize. Kyung stared at the Counselor. Minor species? They murdered 2.3 million civilians. 340,000 were children. Nevertheless, Valaxis continued, the Council cannot interfere. We suggest you pursue diplomatic channels with the Velcran Imperium. Other Council members nodded. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked bored. This was just another squabble between primitive races. Not worth their time. Kyung took a deep breath. Then humanity formally withdraws from this council. You will hear from us again, but not in this forum. She walked out. Behind her, the council chamber erupted in discussion. A few species understood what had just happened. Most did not. On Earth, Prime Minister Dae-ho Sung convened an emergency cabinet meeting. Every minister, every military leader, every intelligence director, they gathered in the Situation Room deep beneath Geneva. Intelligence Director So-min Bae presented first. She was young for her position, only 38, but brilliant. The Velcran Imperium controls 47 star systems. Their total population is estimated at 94 billion. They have 300 military vessels. Their technology is slightly ahead of ours in weapons, roughly equal in shields and engines. She pulled up another display. They're an aggressive expansionist empire. They've conquered 12 other species in the past 2 centuries. They view other races as either subjects or obstacles. What about their homeworld? Admiral Jiwon Nam asked. So-min highlighted a star system. Thrix. It's their political and military center. Population of 8.4 billion. Almost their entire leadership is located there. Admiral Jiwon stood. She was 62 years old and had spent 40 years in the military. She had fought pirates. She had defended colonies from raiders, but she had never fought a real war. None of them had. Humanity had been at peace for 70 years. We have one option, she said quietly. Project Morningstar. The room went silent. Everyone knew about Morningstar. It was classified at the highest level. Only a dozen people in human space knew it existed. Are you insane? The defense minister said. Morningstar was never meant to be used. It's a deterrent. A theoretical weapon. It's theoretical no longer, Admiral Jiwon replied. We built it. We tested it, and now we need it. She activated a hologram. It showed a device about the size of a cargo container. Morningstar is a quantum-catalyzed fusion cascade weapon. We fire it into a star. It triggers a runaway fusion reaction. The star goes supernova, destroying everything in the system, Prime Minister Dae-ho said quietly. Yes, the defense minister stood up. That's genocide. That's the death of billions. We can't do that. They killed 2.3 million of us, the Colonial Affairs Minister shot back. Without warning, without mercy. You saw the footage. They murdered children. So we murder their children? That makes us no better than them. The argument raged for hours. Some demanded blood. Some demanded restraint. Some wanted economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, conventional military action. Admiral Jiwon waited until they exhausted themselves. Then she spoke again. The Velcran attacked us because they thought we were weak. Because they thought we couldn't fight back. Intelligence reports indicate they're planning to attack 6 more of our colonies. She let that sink in. If we respond with conventional warfare, this becomes a long war. Years, maybe decades. Our colonies are spread out, vulnerable. They have more ships, more resources. They'll bleed us slowly, one colony at a time. She pulled up the hologram of Thrix again. But if we respond with Morningstar, we send a message. We send a message so clear, so absolute, that no species will ever threaten humanity again. The Velcran will be broken, and every other aggressive empire in the galaxy will think twice. At the cost of our souls, the defense minister whispered. At the cost of our survival, Admiral Jiwon replied. Prime Minister Dae-ho Sung looked around the table. He saw fear, anger, grief, determination. These were good people. people who had dedicated their lives to peace and prosperity. Now he was asking them to authorize the death of billions. This requires approval from the Terran Assembly, he said. I will present our options. They will vote. The Assembly met 2 days later. Representatives from every human world, every colony, every station. They watched the footage from New Jeju again. They heard Admiral Jiwan's plan. They heard arguments for and against. A representative from New Dublin stood. My constituents lost family on New Jeju. They want justice. They want safety. They want to know this will never happen again. A representative from Earth stood. Justice, yes, but not genocide. We must find another way. What other way? Someone shouted. The Galactic Council won't help. Conventional war will take years. How many more colonies die while we debate? The arguments went on for 8 hours. Finally, the vote was called. 347 voted in favor. 89 voted against. 12 abstained. Prime Minister Daeho Sung sat alone afterward. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical thing. He thought about his grandchildren, about the kind of world he was creating for them. A world where humanity destroyed stars to protect itself. He activated the authorization codes. Admiral Nam, you are authorized to proceed with Operation Morningstar. May God forgive us for what we're about to do. The Terran Defense Fleet mobilized. 200 warships gathered at staging points across human space. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. At its center was the experimental vessel Requiem. It carried Project Morningstar in its cargo hold. Admiral Jiwan Nam stood on the bridge of her flagship. Around her, officers prepared for departure. Young men and women who had joined the military for adventure, for service, for honor. Now they were going to destroy a star system. She activated the fleet-wide channel. This is Admiral Nam. In 24 hours, we jump to the Velcran home system. Our mission is simple. We will deploy Project Morningstar. We will ensure that what happened to New Jeju never happens again. She paused. I won't lie to you. What we're about to do is terrible. History may judge us as monsters. But we do this so that human children can sleep safely. We do this so that humanity survives. Remember New Jeju. Remember why we fight. The fleet vanished into quantum space. Destination, Thrix. 200 human warships carrying vengeance. The journey through quantum space took 3 weeks. 21 days for 200 human warships to cross the distance between their staging point and the Velcran home system. 21 days for the crews to think about what they were about to do. Captain Hyun Cha commanded the Requiem. He was 34 years old, the youngest fleet captain in Terran Defense Force history. He had earned his command through brilliance and dedication. Now he wished someone else was sitting in this chair. The Requiem was unique. It had been built specifically to carry Project Morningstar. Extra shielding, reinforced cargo holds, quantum drives powerful enough to escape a supernova's shockwave. It was a ship designed for one terrible purpose. Dr. Jinwoo Ro sat in the science bay staring at the weapon. It didn't look like much. Just a cylinder 3 meters long, covered in cooling systems and quantum field generators. It looked too small to kill billions. Captain wants you on the bridge, a young ensign said. Jinwoo walked through the corridors. Crew members moved quietly, efficiently. Nobody made small talk. The weight of their mission hung over everything like a dark cloud. Captain Hyun stood by the main viewport watching the distorted light of quantum space flow past. Doctor, tell me again how it works. Jinwoo had explained it a dozen times already, but he understood. Hyun needed to hear it again, needed to understand exactly what they were about to do. Morningstar contains a quantum catalyst, Jinwoo began. His voice was tired. He hadn't slept properly in days. When we fire it into the star's core, it disrupts the balance between fusion pressure and gravitational collapse. The fusion rate increases exponentially. Within 13 minutes, the star becomes unstable. It goes supernova, and everything in the system dies. Everything. The planets. The stations. The ships. Anyone who doesn't escape in those 13 minutes. Yun turned to face him. Could we give them warning? Tell them to evacuate? We could, but Admiral Nam's orders are clear. No warnings. If we give them time, they'll try to stop us. Or they'll evacuate their leadership while leaving civilians behind. So we're killing everyone, leaders and civilians alike. Jinwoo met his eyes. Yes? Lieutenant Yuna Kim sat in the weapons bay running diagnostics on the Morningstar launcher. She was 28 years old. She had volunteered for this mission specifically. Her sister had lived on New Jeju, her sister's 3 children, all dead. Other crew members whispered that Yuna was too eager, that she wanted revenge too badly. They were right. She did want revenge. She wanted the Velcran to suffer like her family had suffered. But now, 3 weeks into the mission, doubts crept in. She thought about Velcran children. Did they deserve to die for what their military had done? Did innocent civilians deserve this? She pushed the thoughts away. New Jeju's children hadn't deserved to die either. Meanwhile, on Thrix Prime, War Master Thraken stood on the balcony of his new estate. The Velcran Imperium had rewarded him handsomely for the conquest of New Jeju, land, titles, honor. He had risen from a mere fleet commander to one of the Imperium's highest military leaders. The humans had been pathetic. They barely fought back. Their orbital defenses were a joke. It had taken only 6 hours to sterilize the entire planet. Easy, simple, profitable. The Imperium was already planning the next phase. 6 more human colonies would fall within the year, then 12 more. Humanity would be driven back to their home system, contained, made irrelevant. Thraken's communication device chimed. One of his subordinates. War Master, we're receiving concerning intelligence from our border patrols. The humans are mobilizing their fleet. How many ships? Unknown. Our scouts report at least 50 vessels gathering at multiple points. Thraken laughed. Let them come. We crushed one of their colonies without breaking a sweat. If they want a real war, we'll give them one. He cut the communication and returned to watching the sunset. Thrix's star was beautiful this time of day, red and massive. It would burn for another 1 billion years. Empress Scrathis ruled the Velcran Imperium from the Imperial Palace. She was ancient by Velcran standards, over 200 years old. She had guided the Imperium through countless conquests and expansions. The news of human fleet movements amused her. These mammals thought they could threaten the Imperium. They were barely a century into space travel. Primitive, weak. Mobilize the home defense fleet, she ordered. If the humans are foolish enough to attack Thrix, we'll destroy them utterly. 89 warships began preparing for deployment. The pride of the Velcran military, ships that had conquered worlds, crews that had never known defeat. On the Requiem, Captain Hyun gathered his senior staff. We exit quantum space in 12 hours. Intelligence suggests the Velcran are expecting some kind of attack. They've mobilized their home fleet. Good. Admiral Jiwon Nam's voice came through the secure channel. She was on the flagship 2,000 kilometers ahead. Let them prepare. It won't matter. After the briefing, Hyun walked to the ship's memorial wall. It was a new installation, created specifically for this mission. Every name from New Jeju was projected on it. 2.3 million names scrolling slowly in alphabetical order. He found one name, Choi Hana, the scientist whose final message had started everything. He touched the projection gently. I hope we're doing the right thing, he whispered. Dr. Jinwoo Ro found him there an hour later. Captain, I need to tell you something. What is it? Morningstar was never supposed to be used. When we developed it, it was meant to be a deterrent. Something so terrible that just knowing it existed would prevent wars. I know that. No, you don't understand. We ran simulations. Hundreds of them. We always assumed that if we ever had to use it, we'd give warning. We'd give them time to evacuate civilians. We'd target military installations, not population centers. Orders are orders, Doctor. Orders to commit genocide. Jinwoo's voice cracked. We're going to kill billions of people who had nothing to do with New Jeju. Children. Families, artists and farmers and teachers, people who probably don't even know about New Jeju. Captain Hyun turned to face him fully. You're right. Most of them probably don't know, but their military does. Their government does. Their empress gave the order. And if we don't do this, they'll attack 6 more of our colonies. They'll kill millions more of us. So we become monsters to prevent monsters? Yes. Hyun's voice was quiet but firm. That's exactly what we do. Lieutenant Yuna Kim volunteered to arm the weapon personally. It was a 2-person job, but she insisted. Captain Hyun approved it. He understood. She needed this. In the cargo bay, Yuna and another technician activated Morningstar's systems. The weapon hummed to life. Cooling systems engaged. The quantum catalyst began its pre-deployment sequence. Status green across all systems, the technician reported. Morningstar is ready to deploy. Yuna placed her hand on the weapon's casing. It was cold. Just metal and technology, but in 13 minutes it would end a civilization. For New Jeju, she whispered. The fleet dropped out of quantum space at the edge of the Thrix system. 200 human warships appeared in perfect formation. At their center, the Requiem and its terrible cargo. The Velcran defense fleet moved to intercept. 89 warships against 200. The Velcran were confident. They had never lost a battle. Admiral Jiwan Nam opened a communication channel. It broadcast on every frequency. Every ship in the system would hear it. Every station, every planet. Velcran Imperium. This is Fleet Admiral Jiwan Nam of the Terran Defense Force. For the genocide of 2.3 million human colonists on New Jeju. For the murder of 340,000 children. For the unprovoked attack on a peaceful world. For every species in this galaxy watching. This is what happens when you slaughter humanity's children. Empress Scrathus's response came immediately. Her voice was filled with mockery. You dare threaten the Imperium? You primitive mammals think you can challenge us? We destroyed one of your worlds in hours. We will crush your pathetic fleet, and then we'll burn every human colony in this sector. We will. Admiral Jiwan Nam cut her off. Captain Cha fire Morningstar. Captain Hyun Cha took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. He looked at his crew. Young faces, scared faces, determined faces fire, he said quietly. The Requiem launched Project Morningstar. The weapon streaked toward Thrix's star at near light speed. It would reach the core in 90 seconds. War Master Thraken watched from his flagship's bridge. What was that? What did they just fire? His science officer checked the readings, then checked again. His scales went pale. War Master, that weapon just entered our star's core. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations. Fusion rate is increasing. This isn't possible. What isn't possible? Explain! They're going to make our star explode. Thraken stared at the screen. At Thrix's beautiful red sun. At the system that had been his civilization's home for 10,000 years. How long? He whispered. 13 minutes. Maybe less. Across the system, alarms began to scream. 6 months after the destruction of Thrix, Earth remained divided. Half the planet celebrated. Banners hung in the streets declaring victory. People felt safe for the first time since New Jeju. No more fear of alien attacks. No more wondering if their colony would be next. The other half protested. They gathered in city squares holding signs that read, "Genocide is not justice, and we became the monsters." They demanded trials. They demanded accountability. They demanded someone answer for 18.7 billion deaths. Prime Minister Dae-ho Sung stood before the Terran Assembly and resigned. He was 71 years old now. He looked 80. I authorized Operation Morningstar, he said. His voice was tired. I bear full responsibility for what happened. History will judge whether we chose correctly. I can no longer govern knowing what I ordered. He walked out of the chamber. Nobody tried to stop him. What could they say? Fleet Admiral Jiwan Nam faced a military tribunal. Representatives from every human colony sat in judgment. War heroes and peace activists, military commanders and civilian leaders, all of them trying to answer one question. Was Operation Morningstar justified? Admiral Nam, the chief prosecutor said, you gave the order to deploy a weapon of mass destruction against a populated star system. You killed 18.7 billion sentient beings, most of them civilians. How do you justify this action? Jiwan stood straight. She had not slept well in months. Nightmares haunted her. But her voice was steady. The Velcran Imperium destroyed New Jeju without warning. They murdered 2.3 million humans. Intelligence confirmed they planned to attack 6 more colonies. Conventional warfare would have taken years and cost millions more lives. The Galactic Council refused to intervene. We had no allies, no support. We were alone. So you committed genocide. I protected humanity. I ensured our survival. I made the hardest decision a military commander can make. I chose the lives of billions of future humans over billions of Velcran, including Velcran children, including innocents who had nothing to do with New Jeju. Jiwan's composure cracked for just a moment. Yes, including them. I will carry that burden for the rest of my life, but I would make the same decision again if I had to. The tribunal deliberated for 3 weeks. Captain Hyun Cha never returned to active duty. He was diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He couldn't sleep. When he closed his eyes, he saw Thrix's star exploding. He saw planets burning. He heard the screams that never actually reached his ears through the vacuum of space. The military offered him therapy, medication, honorable discharge with full benefits. He took the discharge but refused everything else. "I don't deserve therapy," he told the counselor. "I don't deserve to feel better." Dr. Jinwoo Ro published a paper 3 months after returning to Earth. It was titled, Project Morningstar, a weapon that should never have been used. In it, he detailed every aspect of the weapon's development and deployment. He held nothing back. "I created this weapon," he wrote. "I am responsible for making it possible. I thought I was preventing wars through deterrence. Instead, I gave humanity the power to commit stellar genocide. I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for what I've done. I know I never can." The paper went viral. Some praised his honesty. Others called him a traitor. He didn't care. He just wanted the truth out there. Lieutenant Yuna Kim left the military 2 months after Operation Morningstar. She couldn't do it anymore. She had joined to protect people, to serve humanity. She had thought revenge would heal the wound of losing her sister. It hadn't. She felt more broken than ever. She became a peace activist. She spoke at schools and universities about the cost of war, about the price of vengeance. People called her a hypocrite. She had participated in the operation. She had armed the weapon. "You're right," she told them. "I am a hypocrite. I wanted revenge, I got it. And now I have to live with what it cost. Learn from my mistake. Don't make the same choice I did." The surviving Velcron were scattered across 12 colony worlds, 407,000. Survivors from a civilization that once numbered 94 billion. They were refugees now, homeless, broken. War Master Thraken tried to keep the survivors organized. But there was no Imperium anymore. No government. No military structure. Just refugees trying to survive. Some wanted revenge. They demanded the remaining Velcron forces attack Earth. Destroy the humans like the humans destroyed them. Thraken refused. "We started this war. We attacked New Jeju first." The humans responded. They responded in the most terrible way possible. But they responded to our aggression. If we attack again, they'll finish what they started. They'll hunt down every last Velcron in the galaxy. He contacted Earth, contacted Ambassador Kyung Lee, offered unconditional surrender. The terms were simple. The Velcron would never attack humans again. They would never expand into human territory. They would submit to monitoring by human observers. In exchange, humanity would provide humanitarian aid and help the Velcron refugees settle on their remaining worlds. "We don't want your territory," Kyung told Thraken. "We don't want conquest. We wanted you to stop. You've stopped." Some Velcron couldn't accept it. A faction of young warriors tried to rebuild the military. They planned attacks. They talked about revenge. Thraken stopped them. He showed them footage of Thrix's death, showed them what human weapons could do. "This is what happens if we fight," he said. "This is what happens if we provoke them again. Is your pride worth extinction?" The rebellion ended. Ambassador Kyung Lee returned to the Galactic Council 6 months after Operation Morningstar. The chamber fell silent when she entered. Every species knew what humanity had done. Every species had detected the supernova. High Counselor Valaxis spoke first. "Ambassador Lee, the Council condemns humanity's actions in the Thrix system. The destruction of an entire star system constitutes an unprecedented act of violence. We are considering sanctions against humanity for this war crime." Dozens of species voiced agreement. Humanity had gone too far. Humanity was dangerous. Humanity needed to be controlled. Kyung waited until they finished. Then she spoke. "When we came to this council after New Jeju, we asked for help. We asked for justice. We asked for intervention. You told us you couldn't help. You told us internal conflicts between minor species were not your concern." She looked around the chamber. "So we handled it ourselves. We did what we had to do to protect our people. Was it terrible? Yes. Was it extreme? Yes, but it was necessary. And it was your fault." "How dare you?" Valaxis began. "You made this happen," Kyung continued. "You created a system where the strong can slaughter the weak without consequence, where genocides go unpunished if the victims aren't important enough. Well, humanity showed you what happens when you abandon your responsibility. When you force species to seek their own justice, you committed genocide. So did the Velcran. They killed 2.3 million humans. But you didn't care about that. You only care now because we responded. Because we showed we're not weak. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species demanded humanity be expelled from the council. Some demanded military intervention. Some demanded sanctions. The vote was called. Should the Galactic Council sanction humanity for the destruction of Thrix? It failed. 60% of species abstained. Not because they approved, because they were afraid. Afraid that humanity would respond to sanctions the same way they responded to New Jeju. Kyung Lee walked out of the chamber. She had made her point. Humanity was no longer a minor species. Humanity was no longer prey. The tribunal reached its verdict on Fleet Admiral Jiwon Nam. The decision was read before the entire Terran Assembly. The tribunal finds that Admiral Nam's actions were strategically justified but morally catastrophic. The deployment of Project Morningstar prevented future Velcran attacks and likely saved millions of human lives. However, the death toll of 18.7 billion sentient beings, most of them civilians, represents one of the largest mass killings in recorded history. The lead judge paused. We cannot condemn Admiral Nam for protecting humanity, but we cannot condone the method. Therefore, we find her actions legally authorized but ethically indefensible. She will not face criminal charges, but she is hereby relieved of all military command and stripped of rank. Jiwon accepted the judgment without comment. She had expected worse. Later, she stood before the memorial that had been erected in Geneva. Two walls facing each other, one bearing the 2.3 million names from New Jeju, one bearing 18.7 billion Velcran names, carefully collected from surviving records. The inscription between them read, "Here lie the costs of peace through fear." May we never forget either wall. Jiwon stood there for hours, reading names, remembering, grieving. A young woman approached her. It was Yuna Kim, Admiral, Yuna said quietly. Former Admiral, I mean. Just Jiwon now. They stood together in silence for a while. Do you think it was worth it? Yuna finally asked. All those deaths. Was it worth the peace? Jiwon thought about it. She thought about New Jeju, about Thrix, about the billions dead on both sides. I don't know, she admitted. Ask me in 50 years. Ask me when we see if the peace holds. Ask me when we know if any other species dares attack humanity. And if they do, then it was all for nothing. 20 years passed. A generation grew up in the shadow of Thrix. They called it the Supernova War. One battle, one weapon. One day that changed the galaxy forever. No species attacked a human colony in those 20 years. Some said it was because humanity was respected. Most knew it was because humanity was feared. The Velcran rebuilt slowly on their remaining worlds. Their population grew from 400,000 survivors to 2 million. They would never be a great empire again, but they would survive. War Master Thraken died in his sleep at age 240. His last words were reportedly, "I'm sorry." Nobody knew if he meant the humans or his own people. Captain Yun Cha opened a small restaurant on Mars. He never married, never had children. He just cooked food and tried to forget. Most days he succeeded, some days he didn't. Dr. Jinwoo Ro became a teacher. He lectured about weapons ethics and the responsibility of scientists. Every class began the same way. Let me tell you about the worst thing I ever created. Lieutenant Yuna Kim founded a peace organization that worked to prevent conflicts between species. She traveled the galaxy. She met with leaders. She told her story to anyone who would listen. Ambassador Kyung Lee, now retired, gave a lecture at the University of Earth. Students filled the auditorium. They wanted to hear from someone who had been there, who had witnessed history. People ask me if Operation Morningstar was justified, she said. They want a simple answer. Yes or no, right or wrong. But there is no simple answer. She pulled up an image of the supernova. It was still visible from Earth even 20 years later. A bright nebula in the constellation Cygnus. We killed 18.7 billion beings to protect our species. We destroyed a star to send a message. Was it justified? We ensured our survival. No one attacks us now. We have peace, but we have peace built on fear, on genocide, on the memory of burning worlds. She looked at the young faces before her. The question isn't whether it was justified. The question is, what price are you willing to pay for survival? What lines are you willing to cross? What will you become to protect those you love? A student raised her hand. What's your answer? Kyung smiled sadly. I don't have one. I just hope your generation never has to find out. In the final scene, a young Velcran student and a young human student sat together in the Galactic University's common area. They were both 20 years old. Born after the war. They knew the history, but they hadn't lived it. My grandmother died on Thrix, the Velcran said. She was a teacher. She had nothing to do with New Jeju. My uncle died on New Jeju, the human replied. He was a farmer. He had nothing to do with politics or war. They sat in silence for a moment. We can't change what happened, the human said finally. No, the Velcran agreed, but maybe we can make sure it doesn't happen again. They returned to their studies, learning together, building bridges over an ocean of ashes. Above them, visible through the university's transparent dome, a bright nebula glowed in the darkness. The remains of Thrix's star. A reminder. A warning. A grave. The galaxy remembered what happened when humanity's children were threatened. The galaxy remembered the species that broke the stars, and the galaxy was very, very careful not to give them a reason to do it again.